Hi guys, in this video we will be talking about the American Revolution. We are going to identify the influence of separation of powers, checks and balances, liberty, equality, democracy, and popular sovereignty on political revolutions, and we will also identify the impact of political and legal ideas contained in the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. By the time that we are done, you will have analyzed important U.S. documents, including the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, and the U.S. Bill of Rights. So let's talk about early American history. Remember that the colonists are actually English subjects. They are Englishmen who moved to the New World, or they're descendants of Englishmen, and as Englishmen they are entitled to the same rights as the people who actually live in England. The king is also tasked with protecting the colonists from Indian attacks and from the French, who are competing for resources in North America. The French and Indian War broke out in 1754 and lasted until 1763. Great Britain and France were battling for control of territory in North America, and Great Britain wins the war. As a result, France surrenders territory in Canada to Great Britain. And the colonists hope to expand further west, but the king does not allow that to happen because he does not have the money or the resources to keep the colonists safe from attacks. The French and Indian War resulted in massive debt for the British government. And so the king needed to impose new taxes in order to raise money to pay for that war and to pay for further protection. The taxes were imposed, however, without the consent of the colonists. And the colonists were particularly upset because they didn't have a representative in Parliament to vote on these taxes, and so they were being taxed without representation. A lot of revolutionary ideas are circulating around Europe and the Americas, and so Americans are getting ideas from events such as the Glorious Revolution. During the Glorious Revolution, if you recall, England overthrew their king because he was being oppressive and unfair, and that leads American colonists to think that they have the right to overthrow their king because he is being unfair. There's also Enlightenment thinkers who are influencing Americans. John Locke, for example, said that there should be no taxation without representation. He said, "If anyone shall claim power to lay and levy taxes by his own authority, and without such consent of the people, he thereby invades the fundamental law of property." In other words, if a king imposes a tax that was not approved by the people, he is violating their natural right to property and taking things without their permission. So the British are going to send more troops to the American colonies to prevent unrest. A lot of the colonists are rebelling, refusing to pay the tax, and acting out as a result of their unhappiness with the taxes. So he's also going to eliminate most of the taxes except for the tax on tea. So this still upsets a lot of the American colonists. And during the Boston Tea Party, some colonists dressed as Native Americans boarded a private ship that was docked at the port of Boston and started dumping the tea into the Boston harbor. This would be kind of like what looting would be today, breaking into a store and breaking the things that are in there. They caused so much damage and loss of money that the British government closed the harbor as punishment and refused to open the harbor up again until they repaid for the damage that they caused. Thomas Paine is a man who supported independence from Great Britain, and he wrote a pamphlet titled Common Sense. This pamphlet is instrumental in convincing colonists to declare their independence from the king. He says the duty of a true patriot is to protect his country from its government. So what he's saying is it is important for the people living in the colonies to rebel and protect everyone from oppressive government. That brings us to journal entry number 24, and this is from the preamble to the Constitution written by Thomas Jefferson. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson put forth many of the ideas of the Enlightenment thinkers. He says, "We hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government. So think back to the Enlightenment lecture and the ideas from these Enlightenment thinkers and answer the following question. Which Enlightenment ideas did Jefferson use in his opening paragraph? So analyze this text and compare it to the ideas from the Enlightenment, and which of these can you find in the preamble to the Declaration of Independence? Alright, so war eventually breaks out. The colonists do declare their independence from the king, and now they have to fight a war to attain their independence. George Washington is going to lead the colonial army, and he also becomes the first president after they win their independence. Independence, however, would not have been achieved without the help of the French. The Americans seek an alliance with France early on. The French are interested in helping the Americans as a way to get revenge on the British for losing the French and Indian War. They also are going to provide troops, money, and supplies that are very much needed in order to win this war. And thanks to them, the Americans finally do get their independence. So the early American government had to be established. The first government was actually the Articles of Confederation. This is a government that was intended to be very weak, and as a result, it was very ineffective. They did not have the power to collect taxes. They did not have the power to raise an army. They could not settle disputes between states, and so it wasn't working out. So the leaders of this new government decided to get together and come up with a new government that was going to be more effective, and they did this at the Constitutional Convention. They created a strong national government that did not threaten individual liberties, so they had to find a balance that would protect individual liberties but still give the federal government enough authority to function. And so the U.S. Constitution was born, which is the government under which we function today. This government instituted several ideas that are very important to the way we run our country. Federalism is the power shared between national and state governments. So remember that the states were concerned about having an all too powerful federal government, and so under the system of federalism, there's a shared power between the states and the federal government. We also have the separation of powers. So power was divided among three branches of government: the legislative, executive, and judicial. This is again an idea from the Enlightenment. It was Montesquieu who proposed this, and this was done to prevent one branch from becoming too powerful through a system of checks and balances. So each of these branches has the power to check the other, and that's going to ensure that no branch becomes tyrannical or too powerful. Part of the Constitution that, and this actually was added to the Constitution after it was ratified, was the U.S. Bill of Rights. These are the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, and these are similar to the English Bill of Rights. Their intention is to protect individual liberties. So we'll go over those in more detail in class, and we'll look at those individually. And one of these important amendments is the idea of popular sovereignty. That's the idea that power rests with the people who elected officials, and that the people are supreme. In other words, the people who are elected to office have the right to rule because the voters put them in power and gave them the right to rule. And you can see it in this cartoon here. The Constitution is based on the idea of popular sovereignty. People vote for their elected representatives. There is no king. The people are supreme. They are the ones who rule the land. Alright, that brings us to the end of the lecture. If you have any questions, ask me in class, and thanks for watching.